State Senate President Bill Ferguson says the 2023 session exceeded all expectations.
This was a truly historic session in many, many ways. There was a great deal of transition, some level of uncertainty. Statewide officials across every one of our constitutional officials was brand new. And I think coming into session, we knew that the General Assembly had to be that solid, the stationary force that provides certainty. And I think we really did that.
Many had concerns about what the legislature would do to tackle the serious crime problem. The end result?
You know, look, we passed probably over $2 billion of investments in violence prevention and peacemaking endeavors, from investing in law enforcement to investing in mental health. You know, I wish, and I've said it 1,000 times, I wish there was a single bill that we could pass that would just solve all of our problems with violence. Unfortunately, it's way more complex than that. And what it takes is executive agencies at every level of government, from the local government at the, be it the mayor or county executive, to every agency at the state level, and then working with our federal partners to have a coordinated plan that they work on every single day to impact crime and violence. That is the answer, and we've seen it time and time again. You know, there are things that we passed this year that I hope provide a little bit of an additional tool here and there. You know, we increased the penalties for illegal gun possession from 3 years to 5 years. You know, this is something that our Baltimore City State's attorney certainly made as a top priority. Do I think it's a solve-all? No. Do I think it maybe makes a moderate difference? I hope so.
As for the growing problem with juvenile crime.
When we think about juvenile crime, I think, you know, there's something happening nationally, and we've seen it from Philadelphia to D.C. to Los Angeles. Something's happening with kids right now that is not okay, and I think it's a product of social media. I think it's a product of the pandemic, post-pandemic time, of the mental health crisis that exists amongst young people. And, you know, I think it's going to take a lot of hands at the till to really figure out how to move forward on this. Of course, there has to be accountability when kids break the law. Of course there does. But at the end of the day, they're kids, and we've got to find ways to divert them so that it doesn't happen again. You know, this isn't something where we just take a 15-year-old who makes a horrible, horrible decision and just throw them away. They're 15. They're coming back into society in some way, shape, or form. We've got to give them the tools they need to change the way that they're behaving. And I think that's where, you know, I'm looking forward to the new administration and the new secretaries who are going to have to rebuild departments to invest in young people, make sure that people are held accountable, but also that we are rehabilitating people so that when they are through serving their sentence, they are ready to be productive citizens again.
One of the most debated issues of the session was over a package of gun bills. Those bills are now on the governor's desk, including one resulting from a ruling last summer by the U.S. Supreme Court. The
Supreme Court essentially, in the Bruin case, changed the paradigm of how states had functioned around the regulations for concealed carry handguns, totally usurped decades and decades of precedent on how states regulated the use of handguns in communities. I think fundamentally it's a value question. For me, do we want to live in a state where we think that the answer to feeling scared or the answer to violence is more people armed, so that if there is a problem, that we have sort of a Wild West situation where everyone has a gun and they're just starting to pull it out and start pulling guns on each other to hopefully prevent the next crime? That's not the state I want to live in. I want to live in a state where we are using other tools, that we are more sophisticated and able to figure out how to deal with complex problems that doesn't require us to be the Wild West. And so, you know, I know there's folks that disagree with that, but this is just a simple value, and reasonable people can disagree. I just don't fundamentally believe that when I drop my kids off at school, or I am in the park with them, or I'm, you know, visiting a friend who's dropping their kid off at daycare, or I'm going to the polling place, I don't want to have to worry if somebody's had a bad day. That if I bump into them by mistake and they've had a rough afternoon and they're carrying a concealed weapon, that all of a sudden a disagreement turns into a gunfight. That's just not the type of world I want to live in. And so what these bills were about was trying to say that in Maryland, we don't want to live in a society where it's about more guns. We want to live in a place where it's as few guns as possible, because we know that more guns leads to more gun crimes, leads to more stolen guns, leads to more guns being used in suicides. It is just a simple fact. We see it across the globe. And so this is an effort to restrict the number of guns that are in our society.
And it was last year's Supreme Court ruling on Roe v. Wade that was behind a bill passed this session that will put the right to reproductive freedom before the voters next year.
50 years of constitutional precedent thrown over by, 6 people who decided that, what was established principle, what they had sat in front of the U.S. Senate and said was established law, was just thrown out the window in a single opinion. And, it's now left to the states, and I think Maryland responded. We put something that will be up on the ballot in 2024 elections to protect a woman's right to choose constitutionally here in the state of Maryland. But we didn't stop there. It wasn't just about constitutional protection. Maryland is a place where we understand that the privacy between a woman and her doctor is fundamental. And those decisions, those very, very difficult, personal, private decisions are to be protected. And so we passed legislation to protect it for each and every woman that is in the state or that comes to the state to have a medical procedure, to have a consultation. We believe that our healthcare professionals and women who seek their care need to be protected, and so that's the legislation that we passed this year.
One issue lawmakers may not have anticipated having to tackle again, but did: Maryland's racetracks.
It's very, very frustrating that we're back here again. In 2020, after 2019, there was a very controversial bill that we ended up stopping, thankfully, that would have moved the Preakness out of Baltimore and moved it to Laurel. In 2020, we came back and had a solution. Here we are in 2023, and it's like Lucy in the football, and it just keeps getting pulled and pulled. And I think the challenge is that we have, a private operator who owns both tracks and who runs daily racing in Maryland and also runs the Preakness. And so, as much as there is this public-private partnership when it comes to thoroughbred racing in the state of Maryland, I think we've come to understand that the private entity that has overseen Maryland racing for the last 15 years has really kind of lost its way. And so we have to figure out a way forward in July. The 10-year agreement that had been in place is due. And so this authority that we've set up, the Maryland Racing Authority, hopefully is the bedrock, similar to New York, that can help us navigate forward. But it'll be up to this authority and the governor, working with the speaker and I, and our leadership teams, to figure out, what is the right path to protect Maryland thoroughbred racing moving forward. I'm not sure where we land, but I'm hopeful that this framework allows us to get there.
When angry participants in the Maryland 529 Plan Prepaid College Savings Trust appeared before hearings demanding answers because they were having trouble accessing their accounts and paying tuition, Ferguson says the legislature took action.
Yeah, look, this was a complex problem that really kind of exploded at the beginning of session and was hard. We ended up landing in a place where we are taking what was an independent program run by a board of directors and moving it to the treasurer so that there's a single person that's accountable to the families who are a part of that program. That is no small task. It is not a publicly run system. It is it is private money. It is individual family money that's being invested with 3 different programs. And I think it's really important to note, what we only talked about the prepaid program was the only place there was a problem. In the investment plan and in the ABLE program for developmentally disabled, those 2 programs were totally fine. And so really we were talking about this one prepaid program that the board of directors made some pretty challenging decisions and then were operated by a contractor who really made some huge mistakes that created a great deal of confusion. And so the bill that we ended up landing on, I think, one, moves the program to a single accountable individual, and that will be the state treasurer of Maryland. And Derek Davis is, I think, the right person at the right time to take this on.
One of Ferguson's top priorities for this session, doing more to meet the state's mental health needs, also addressed by lawmakers with bipartisan support.
I am absolutely certain that one of the most important things that we have to deal with over the next 4 years is the mental health crisis that is affecting too many Marylanders. And this isn't something that we're going to be able to fix overnight. And so one of the things that we really set forth this year with our mental health package was to do immediate steps that we know will be beneficial, expanding the use of community-based healthcare centers that are similar to physical health with federally qualified health centers, FQHCs, to now these CCBHCs for behavioral health. And I think we're going to start moving forward with those. We're going to talk about coordinated care so that when you go to your physician, your primary care physician, they're also asking mental health questions and they're able to refer to somebody that's a psychologist or psychiatrist so that, that our primary care physicians can be that frontline healthcare entity that can start to help people navigate the mental health system. And we also set up a commission that's going to set forward the next 4 years and really figure out how can we make sure that our mental health system is as effective as our physical health system, or better.
Another priority for the Senate president this session, find a way to grow the workforce through apprenticeships.
While it has worked great in trades, in the folks where we think of working with their hands or with equipment, the apprenticeships have been phenomenal. Where we have not seen them is sort of in the more away from the trades, insurance, sales, banking, hospitality, leisure, you name it, in finance. All of these professions can have apprenticeable positions. And so we launched the Apprenticeship 2030 Commission that will lay out how we can look at non-traditional industries to build apprenticeships in Maryland to give people a better access for better economic mobility. And I think there's no one solution. This is going to be a 4-year endeavor, and I feel excited about Maryland being a leader in how we create more pathways to opportunity for all Marylanders.
I'm Sue Copen for State Circle.